Okay, this is a demo of Git Flow. This is going to be something that all of the teams in the class who work with GitHub are going to need to master. The sooner you master this, the better. It is a process that there's really no way around just learning the steps and getting in the habit of following them. But once you've done it a couple of times, it becomes kind of natural. And so I want to show you what it looks like. All right, so first off, if you Google Git Flow, this is a good article which explains Git Flow. Here's another article. You can see a lot of them share the same images. Here's a video from somebody called London App Developer. It's about 20 minutes long, and he goes through the whole process as well. I would make it a high priority for everyone to spend some time watching videos, reading a couple of tutorials, and practicing doing Git Flow, because this is one of the fundamentals for agile software development. It is one of the fundamental ways that people are able to collaborate on a larger team to write software together without overriding people's changes and things getting really messy and confusing. Because when you start having 2, 3, 4, 5 people all working on the same repo, things can begin to get messy really quickly. All right, so I'm going to now switch over to ClickUp, and I'm going to go to the API team. And you can see here, it says, as the API team, we need a common feathers install in GitHub for everyone to work from. If you take a look at the current state of the repo, it is clean. We've got 2 branches. We've got a master branch and we've got a develop branch. You can see here that the develop branch is set as the default. So now that that's set up, no one else should have to change at that point. But everybody should be working from this branch when they are working on new features and functionality and bug fixes and things like that for the app. And so I'm going to demonstrate Git Flow. I'm also going to demonstrate how ClickUp and GitHub can be integrated. All right, so I've already integrated I've already gone through the settings in ClickUp to associate the STS Features Lab GitHub repo with ClickUp. And I created a task which says, as the API team, we need a common feathers install in GitHub for everyone to work from. It is an open task. It is currently assigned to me. It's set as a high priority task, and we assigned it 1 point because this is a pretty straightforward task. Since I'm now working on it, I want to move it from open to in progress. That way, this will send when I move that, it'll send a notification into Slack, so people will be able to see that the status changed and who's changed it and what I'm working on. So I'm going to go in here, and if you're working with GitHub, you'll see that there's a little GitHub icon up here, and there is a task ID. This is randomly generated, but it's always going to be capital C, capital U dash some ID number. For every task you create, there will be an automatically generated task ID, and you won't necessarily need to use GitHub for every single task, but for tasks that use GitHub, this is the ID you'll use. If you click on the GitHub icon, it brings up this screen. And in general, when you have a task that involves adding or changing code in the repository, you want to create a new branch. If you look at this article on Git Flow, here's a diagram showing that you've got a master branch. From the master branch, you create the develop branch. The develop branch is the main branch. It's the one where most of the work gets done. But you don't actually do the work on the develop branch, you create what are called feature branches, and that's where you do your coding. You make all of your changes, you get all of your tests running and working. When you think you're done with your work, then you can submit a pull request to merge the code from the feature branch back into the develop branch. And one of the nice things about ClickUp is that, you know, if you are working on a task which says that you need to do something that will, you know, obviously involve GitHub, you can click on the GitHub logo. It'll bring up this, and in this case we want to create a branch. So I'm going to click create branch. Now it's going to come up with a branch name which first of all includes the task ID for this task. That's great. If you go to the very end of this, you'll see it also includes my name. That's also good. What's not so good about these branch names is the branch name is really long, and it has the whole task just written out with dashes. So whenever you create a branch, go in here and make it short. So I'm going to call this add base. I'm going to call this add feathers base. I'm going to select the repository. There's only two repositories right now. There's the API repository and there's the front end repository. This is obviously going to be the API repository. And then I need to choose the source branch, right? The source branch is the branch from which your new branch will be created, right? And so the source branch should pretty much always be the develop branch that you want to create the branch off of. So I'm going to select develop as the source branch and click create new branch. It's going to do that, and then it's going to give me the branch name right here, which I can click on this little clipboard icon to copy that to my clipboard. If you go back to the repo and you refresh the main page, here in this little drop down where it's got the list of the branches, you can see now there's a new branch called CU something or whatever, add feathers base Morgan Benton. So that's a new branch. All right, so I'm going to go to my terminal. In my terminal, you can see here, I did a git pull, which pulled down the develop branch. I switched onto the develop branch, and I'm there now. Now if I do git pull, it's going to pull down the latest changes. The latest change is the creation of the new branch. So I've done that, and so now that I've pulled that branch from the remote repository, I'm going to do git checkout. I'm going to paste in that branch name. And you'll see here that it changes me over to being in that branch. Now all the things that I do, these changes won't get reflected in the develop branch until I do a git add commit push and then push the changes to the repository and then submit a pull request. So at this point, I can start doing the things that I wanted to do, right? In this case, that's create the base application for feathers. So in this case, I need to remember what the process for creating a feathers app is, and so let's go to feathersjs.com. I'm going to click on the docs, and by the way, it's absolutely the case that when people are starting things or developers, professional developers, look stuff up all the time. You don't memorize things, right? So this says create a new directory. Okay, we've done that. And then you're going to do feathers generate app. Oh, that's easy. All right, so let's do that. Feathers generate app. It says, do we want to use JavaScript or TypeScript? We want to use JavaScript. Project name care API is fine. Description is REST/real-time API for the care app. What folder should the source files live in? Source is fine. which package manager, npm is fine. I'm gonna select both REST and real-time via socket IO for the transports. For testing framework, we're going to choose Jest. And this app uses authentication. I'm going to say no right now. Even though it will eventually, it doesn't right now, and we'll figure out how to add it later when the QA security team helps us out with that. Which coding style do you want to use? ESLint versus standard JS. I'm going to go ahead and just choose ESLint since that is what's there. We might make some tweaks to the style guidelines to make it a little bit more in conformance with the front end at some point, but for right now we'll just accept the default. So you can see here that the Feathers CLI is generating the skeleton of a Feathers app for me, and I just have to wait for this to complete. Okay, now that that's done, if I want to take a look at the files here, I can open up Visual Studio Code by typing code space dot. Dot refers to this directory that I'm currently in. And drag this over, maximize it. And so you can see here are all the files that were just generated by Feathers. And they all are in green and they have a little U next to them. The U stands for untracked. That means that from Git's perspective, it's never seen these files. It doesn't know what they are. It doesn't know what it should do with them. Okay, so let's run Feathers just to confirm that it's all set up correctly and it's doing what it's supposed to. If you forget what the commands are that you can type to start something, you can always, in a JavaScript file, look at the package .json file, and there will be a section called scripts, and you'll see there's a script for test, for lint, for dev, which starts the server. There's a start one and there's a just one. So in this case, I'm going to open up a terminal here and I'm going to type npm run dev, and when you're doing development, this is the one you use to start the server. And you can see that it starts a server at localhost 3030, and I can click on that and you can see, ta-da, I've got my my Feathers server up and running. I could try to visit a URL endpoint like users, and I get a 404 because I haven't set up any services yet. But this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to create the base app to work with, so I'm going to go ahead and stop that server. I'm going to type git status, and if you see here, it's going to say it's got all of these files and folders that are untracked and it doesn't know anything about them yet. You'll notice that it doesn't capture the node modules folder. That is good. Node modules is not a folder that you should ever check into a repository unless you have a very, very good reason. And that doesn't very much happen. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to go ahead and do one more thing before I get this set up, and that is install. Before I commit this, I'm going to install something called commitizen. Commitizen is a code quality tool for forcing everybody to follow best practices when it comes to commits, and it's really important that you follow this process when we go through this, because this is one of the key ways that we have documentation of what happened at every minute step along the way. You'll have to do the npm install -g commitizen on your system to get the command installed. But the repo itself will already be set up to be commitizen friendly. That's the process I'm going through right now. And so what I'm going to do then is I've already got commitizen installed on my system, and I'm going to take this command, commitizen init cz conventional changelog save dev save exact. And I know from history that I'll also want to use the force flag on there. So I'm going to do that, and it's going to set up commitizen as the tool for keeping track of commits and change logs and things like that. So, all right, so that should be working now. So now if I do git status again, we basically have the same set of files, but commitizen is set up, and that will allow me to do what I'm about to do right now. So the first thing we need to do is need to add all the things that we want to add, and that's, in this case, is everything. So I'm going to do git add dot. Now if I check the status, you'll see all of these new files that are ready to be committed. So now, where in the past you might have done git commit, this is where commitizen comes in. You're going to, instead of git commit, you're going to type git cz, right? Git cz. And this is going to walk you through a little Q&A where you'll provide information towards, and this information will then be reflected in the documentation of our process. So there's a bunch of different categories for different commits. You could be adding a new feature, fixing a bug, updating your documentation. You could be fixing style of your code, like the format of your code. You could be refactoring something, so like take a function that was working maybe poorly or inefficiently, and you're not changing its functionality, you're just making it work better. That's called a refactor. You could be making a change that affects the performance, improves the performance hopefully. You could be adding or correcting tests. You could be doing something that affects the build system, so doing something that involves like your Webpack configuration or something like that. You could be doing changes to the continuous integration setup. We will set up continuous integration eventually, but not today. Other things that pretty much don't fall into any category, we call those chores, right? And for me, a chore would be something like add commitizen or something like that. You wouldn't call that a feature because it's not new, like functionality, but for a lot of things, anything that doesn't really fit into one of the other categories, you can just put it as a chore. And a revert reverts a previous commit. So if somebody accidentally commits something and then decides, no, I didn't really want to do that, you can revert that and go back. And that's one of the main reasons for using Git, obviously, is that it allows you to have a perfect history of all the changes that have been made to a repository, and you can always undo those changes, and Git will keep track of that for us. But we're going to call this a new feature, right? I would call the app a feature. It's going to ask you, what is the scope of this change? In this case, the scope is the whole app, so I'm just going to put app, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to write a short imperative tense message. Imperative means a command, so it should be like add, modify, fix, right? When you write these commit messages, you're looking at 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 words, but this says max 89 characters. Typically, your commit message is in the range of like 15 to 30, maybe 40 characters. They're usually very short, and you should try to keep them short. So I'm going to say add base feathers, provide a longer description of this. This is where you can type out better instructions or better description of what it is that you've just done. And you want this longer description ideally to be descriptive enough that you or somebody else in the future who were trying to sort of retrace our steps could recreate what happened in this current commit if they needed to. So in this case, use, and this also should be in the imperative tense, use feathers CLI to generate a new app skeleton. That's basically what we did. So I'm going to hit enter. It says, are there any breaking changes? Breaking changes are things where if you made a commit and changed something that would require other people, if it would cause other people's code to break and stop working, those are what we refer to as breaking changes. And you want to keep track of those because you need to flag those for extra careful review and consideration. But this does not contain any breaking changes. And if you're just fixing things that exist already or are adding new features, you're typically not going to have any breaking changes. So I'm just going to accept the default, which is no. And then this last one, does this affect any open issues? The answer to this question should almost always be yes. Now the default is no, so if you hit enter, it'll like go ahead and run through the commit process, but make sure you hit Y and hit enter, and it'll say add issue references. So let's, normally I would do this on, normally I would have done this on GitHub, and I forgot in this particular case, so let's go back and do it now. Whenever you create a task on ClickUp, if you'll copy that and go to the GitHub repository, go to the Issues tab, click New Issue, and paste that user story or that task into the issue. Assign the person that should be assigned. In this case, I'm assigning myself, but all of you are in GitHub now, and you should show up there. And the other thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to copy the ClickUp task ID and add it either to the title or in the issue here, right? And you can put open, or I think you can put a status in progress. And theoretically, the integration between GitHub and ClickUp will be such that when you do that, it will update the status of that task in ClickUp, as well as putting things here. So it'll keep, in other words, it'll keep your ClickUp and your GitHub in sync. All right, so you can see here at the end of this issue, it says number 1, right? So that's issue number 1 for the Care API repo. So here, back to my my commit, right? I need to say, okay, add issue references. So one issue reference is the ClickUp issue reference. So I want to paste that ClickUp ID. And the other thing that's useful is that the ClickUp ID is always in the branch name. So you should be able to just copy it straight from there. And I'm going to type closed here, because what happens is when this pull request, or when this gets committed and a pull request gets submitted, it will automatically shift the status of this issue in ClickUp to the closed column. So if you learn how to use all of these things correctly, then it will keep GitHub and ClickUp and your local code repository, it'll keep everything perfectly in sync. And I'm going to put it in here, fix number 1, right? Number 1 is, again, this issue. So I want to refer to the issue that's on GitHub, and I want to refer to the task that's on ClickUp. And I'm hit enter. And you can see that all of these files here changed to white. The commit has been done. If I type git status, you'll see that I'm on this branch, right? I'm on the add feathers base branch, and my branch is ahead of the remote branch by 1 commit, but I've got nothing to commit. My working tree is clean. So once you've finished making all the changes and you tested them and you know they work, you've used commitizen to do your commit messages, and you can have multiple commit messages on your branch before you push it. Now that I've done all that, I'm going to type git push, and this will push this code up to GitHub. All right, so now that that's done, it says it pushed all that to GitHub. Now if I go to GitHub and I click on the pull requests tab, I'm going to get a notification that's saying that the add feathers base branch had recent pushes, and it's going to give me it's going to prompt me to compare and submit a pull request. So I'm going to click that. And you're going to notice that the things that I typed in, right? Feature app, add base feathers, right? This is a new feature that applies to the whole app. The short commit message I wrote was add base feathers. And then the longer commit message I wrote is here. Use feathers CLI to generate new app skeleton. It's also got the reference to the ClickUp task and the new status for it, which is closed. And it also has a reference to the GitHub issue that was there. So now I'm going to click Create Pull Request. And this will generate a new pull request. Now, for most of us this semester, after we submit a pull request is saying to the team, hey, I've made some changes. I think they're ready to go. I'm ready to merge them back into the develop branch, right? You see that these will be merged back into the develop branch. In terms of the diagram, right, this is the stage where you've got the develop branch, you've created a feature branch, you've made one or more commits, and you're ready to merge that back into the develop branch. That's the stage we're at right now. So you make a pull request. You say, hey, I'm ready to merge. Typically, you'll want to request reviews. So there's a section up here called reviewers, and if you click on that, you can. This says request up to one reviewer. So you need to find one person on your team. We need to see if we can get multiple reviewers, but typically you want to get other people on your team to review your work. And once you do that, I'll show the review process at another time. But this merge will not be allowed to happen until the review has been completed. The review could result in people saying, great, let's go for it. The review could result in, here's some bugs I found, here's some changes I think you should make. The review could result in, no, I think we should ditch this altogether. But let's say that we had the review is great. You can see here that it's linked to this task from ClickUp, right? And then I'm gonna click merge pull request. For the most part, you can just keep the default messages that are in here. Click confirm merge. And once that's done, right, whenever you've, most of the time, you're not going to need that branch anymore because the changes that had to be made have been made. They've been done in a safe, isolated environment, which is the feature branch. They've been reviewed and whatnot. So now we can click delete branch. Now you'll notice here that it says restore branch, right? So if you ever need to bring the branch back, you can restore it, but you don't have to. But in general, you should be good with deleting it. And deleting the branches is useful to keep us from having too many simultaneously open branches, right? Because if you imagine, right, there could be 10, 20, 30 open branches all at the same time. It would get really confusing, get really hard to find the things that you're interested in. All right, so I'm going to go over to the issues column, to the issues tab, and you'll notice that the issue is not showing up anymore because it has been closed automatically, right? And if you click on it, you can see this is a closed issue that is associated with one merge, right? And if you go back to code, now you can see here on the develop branch that the base of our feathers application now exists in the main repository. Now all of you, right, everybody else who's working on this can go back to their development environment and they can type git pull, and that will pull down the changes. In this case, it will delete that branch that it will merge all the code back into the develop branch. And now I'm going to do git checkout develop. And now I'm back on the develop branch. Right? And let's do git pull here to make sure I've got all the stuff. And now we're good. So now I'm on the develop branch. I've got all of the changes that were made. It also probably got rid of that branch that we had just created for the purpose of this. Now if we take a look at ClickUp, you'll notice that that task I was working on has automatically been moved to, let's see, this is the develop branch, need a clean repo, need a develop branch in order to serve as the main repo, common feathers install on GitHub. So this is the one we were just working on. You'll see that merge pull request number 2 from SDS features, add feathers base. You can see that the GitHub actions, the things that happened here, all these updates are automatically listed in the comment thread for the task. It got changed to closed, and we should be all good to go. All right, so that's the process. Everyone needs to learn this process. There are more gotchas and different paths that this might take, right? So maybe if in between the time that you started your branch and that you commit, someone else has made a commit, you might need to merge their code into yours. We'll go through all of those different scenarios as they come up over the course of the semester. But this is a process that everybody needs to learn, and this is standard Git flow as you experience it in industry.